Greetings and salutations. I hope this video finds you doing well. This will be the first Linux-related video of the year for me on this channel. I want to thank everybody who had nice things to say when I posted the video not too long ago showing off the silver play button from YouTube. Been waiting for a while to get that, and I was kind of happy to be able to share that with you guys. And I was a little bit surprised because one of the things I said in that video was that moving forward here, I'm not going to be doing 100% Linux content. I'm going to do other things on the channel as well. I didn't say I was going to stop doing Linux altogether, but I thought there would be some sort of uproar and upheaval, and there really wasn't. Everybody was very nice about that, so thank you very much, and thank you for your kind comments. So what is this video about? Well, if you come to EasyLinux.com, you'll notice that there is a page here called Bash Scripts, and these are little computer programs written to be run in the terminal, and I have made them available to the public over the last several years, and about once a year I go through all of these and make sure that no updates are needed and that everything is all right, and then I usually share a video talking about any updates if there were any. And this year I don't have any updates. Everything is working just exactly the way it ought to. So if you've seen videos about my bash scripts before, this is going to be a bit familiar to you, but a lot of new people have come to the channel since I first posted talking about a lot of these scripts. So some of this stuff might be quite new to some of you guys. And yeah, you can probably already tell this is going to be kind of a rambly hangout video, which is something that I've been wanting to do for a while. So if that's something that makes you happy, you might want to hit pause and go grab a beverage. And here we go. So a couple of provisos and quid pro quos before we get into talking about these scripts. First of all, these are very much as is with no guarantee. They are published under the GNU license version 2, General Public License, the GPL. And what that means is they are free software. You can download them. You can do whatever you want with them. The only thing that I ask is that if you do take something of mine and then you decide to redistribute it, that you change the name. That's all. I'm not particularly interested in getting your patches either. I just simply this stuff works for me. These are tools that work for me as they are right now. And of course, everybody has different ways of doing things. And what works for me in my particular setup may not work for you, or vice versa. You may come up with a better way that's more efficient for whatever you're doing, and that's perfectly all right. But please don't feel obligated to send me your patches because, hey, whatever you do is up to you. They're meant to be springboards anyway. That's why they were shared in the first place. And, of course, there is this lovely warning message up here basically saying that nobody should use any of this software for anything at any time, and it is completely useless. So keep that in mind. I had a fellow make a comment on a video the other day. It was so funny. And he basically said that Linux was useless. That was the whole thing. And he did it on the video called Beginner's Guide to the Bash Terminal, which is like the most watched video on this channel, in which I show people how to do all this stuff. And I giggled so hard when he posted that. So my response to him was something along the lines of, "Hey, it's really obvious you have no idea what you're talking about. Please keep typing and show more of your ignorance. This should be fun." And he responded to it, and he said, "Well, I never said I was ignorant. I just said that whatever." And my response to him was, "Hey, you came in here to piss all over it, and that's what you did. That's fine. You had your chance. Now you're deleted." But anyway, it was funny. I almost made a video about it. But anytime that you make a video about a comment, people think that you're complaining because somebody said something that you didn't like. So I didn't, and didn't want to open up that can of worms, but it was funny. So I've been walking around like for the last, 3 or 4 days saying, "Linux is useless. Excuse me while I go do something on my Linux computer, or while I go to my Linux-based server, which it hosts my website, and it's completely useless, but it runs perfectly, whatever. So anyhow, that's kind of the frame of mind I'm in. Plus, today is a very weird day. We had some snow roll through Virginia today, and I can't work at the radio station. Those of you who follow the channel closely know that I do a radio show every day for a radio station. We'll talk about that more at the end of the video. And there's something wrong with the internet in the area where the radio station is, and can't log in, so it's been a very weird day. It's working remotely is a great thing. It's been a huge help during the pandemic. A lot of people have been able to continue working, but boy, when that stuff breaks down, your life comes to a screeching halt, and that's exactly what has happened to us today at the radio ranch. Had to go to Plan B on everything. It was crazy. Anyway, let's get into the actual web page. So the plan here, there's no script, is just kind of roll down through these. I do have a couple of little things set up for you guys to see that show how this stuff works, but I really haven't planned beyond the first thing. So we'll just scroll down here, and basically this first part explains what I just said about, do whatever you want. The piece of software that I am the most proud of as a script is Backup, or BU, or Backup USB. It's one of those kind of things where you can say all kinds of things. And by the way, all the software that's here is hosted at GitHub. So if you click these links, you can either go to the GitHub page or you can download it directly from GitHub, and it comes in a zip file. Anyway, BU is a backup utility, and it's an evolution of a utility that I wrote a long time ago called XBT, External Backup Tool. XBT was a kind of a big menu-driven, crazy program that was probably a little bit too ambitious for Bash. Bash, by the way, is the programming language that goes along with the Bash shell in your terminal. In other words, it's not just for executing commands and moving files around and things like that. You can actually write programs that run natively in Bash. And I'm not the world's greatest programmer, and by no stretch of the imagination, but I got fascinated with writing things for Bash. And this particular program that I wrote was huge, and it was just so gargantuan. And I ended up having to go in and put patches in it that made it run automatically, because it used to be menu driven. In other words, you'd fire off the command at the terminal and it would open, and then there would be a menu and you would choose. This program was also designed to run from a menu, like a regular graphic program that would open up in its own dedicated terminal, and which was really cool in and of itself, but it still wasn't as slick as a lot of people who wanted to use it wanted it to be. So I ended up patching it at one point where you could put in commands at a terminal and then it would automatically do what it was supposed to do. And so anyway, after a while it got to a place where I couldn't patch it anymore, and I said I'm just going to start from scratch, and what I came up with was this program called BU. Now if you come to the page, it will link you to the video and it will give you the full description of the program. Basically, this is how it works. One of the things that I am very passionate about, I don't know whether that's the right word, is maintaining backups of data. If you have been through some of the horror stories that I have, you would understand why. And BU basically allows you to take any external USB drive. It has to be USB. You can't do this with like an SD chip or any of that stuff. It has to be USB. And you plug it in, and then you have a partition on that USB drive, which is set aside just for use by the backup tool. And the backup tool can go and check and make sure that's there. And if it isn't there, then it won't do it. You can't just use it with any drive. You have to set the drive up. It has to be a Linux native operating system. It can be either, well, you could use BetterFS, ButterFS, whatever you want to call that. Or you could use XFS, but really it's got ext4 in mind. And just have an ext4 partition on there, and it will automatically detect that, and then it will create a directory on that drive that is dedicated to your computer, and it will back up everything in the home directory on that computer to that directory and make an exact snapshot of it. And once you do that one time, the next time it will just do the updates. It'll only bring over what's changed. So the first time you do it, it may take, I don't know, hours, depending on how much data you have. But the next time it does it, it's only going to take a couple of minutes because it's only going to move over whatever changed. And that's all it does. It's a very simple piece of software. A lot of people, when they think of backup software, they think of more complex things that have rolling backups, and it will store the backups in proprietary locked files and things like that. That's exactly what I was trying to avoid. I wanted to make a very accurate, restorable image of what was in the home directory, but I also wanted it to be freely accessible. So let's go ahead and give BU a demonstration here. So this thing right here, where I have that, this is actually a terminal, and it's running right now. And if I do that, isn't that cool? We'll get to that one here in a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to do is I have my BU Ready backup drive, and we'll plug it into this computer like so, and it's going to find it here in a minute. And by the way, we're doing this video on Linux Mint 20, which has been fantastic, and I have no intention of upgrading. So you will probably not see a video here about Linux 20.1, because or Linux Mint 20.1 rather. Alright, so I have the drive in there, and you can see that there is a directory here called BU Backups. If I click on that, notice we have a couple of machine names. We have Big Boy, and then I have another one on the network called WeeWoo. My daughter came up with these machine names. Don't ask questions. I know it's kind of strange. So if I go over here to my terminal, now that I have hooked up the drive, and I run BU, this is what it does. The first thing it's going to do is ask me for a password, and I gave it the password. And now it is going to go through, and it's going to back up all of the data that has changed since the last backup on this computer. And it's probably going to try and copy half a video file. It may even exit with an error. That's okay. I probably should have backed it up earlier. This way it would actually just do it really quick, because I'm capturing HD video on this machine while I do this. Here we go. We're done. And then what it does is it syncs all the drives, which means that it makes sure that all the data gets written, and it'll tell me that it's okay to remove the drive when it is done. And sometimes it takes longer to sync than it does to actually run, especially if your machine has a lot of memory in it. And we're using USB 2.0 here. This is a pretty old machine. So there, it's done. And then you can safely remove the drive if it makes you feel better, but it's already all synced up. So it's perfectly alright just to unplug it. We're not going to do that right this second, because I want to come over here and show you where the files went. So if we open up the BU backup directory and we see those directories there, let's say go into Big Boy, you'll see that I have grabbed the home directory from Big Boy, and I have grabbed also the etc directory, or etc, or etc, which is where a lot of the settings for your Linux distribution are stored. And this is a good thing to have backed up, because if you ever have to restore your system, you have to reinstall, you can go grab some different settings and files out of there, especially for things like Secure Shell. It's just easier to grab all the stuff and throw it back in than it is to reset all that up. You'll also notice here there's a flag file, and the flag file tells you exactly when the last backup was. So if I run this again, let's just do it one more time, that flag file is actually going to change. Yes, I live, by the way, a block away from a fire station, for those of you who haven't been following the channel. So you are likely to hear sirens go by. So yeah, that should have updated that file, and it looks like it did. And if it didn't, well, I didn't look close enough to see what the time was on the first one. So you guys can tell me whether it did or it didn't in the comments. Either way, you get the idea of how it works. So that is BU. And one of the beautiful things about working with open source Linux is the fact that you can see the source code. And I'm actually going to show it to you. We'll kind of walk through that really quick. So we can go ahead and unplug that drive, because we have done that demonstration. La 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 la. All right. Let's jump over here and take a look at what one of these things looks like. So this is BU. And when you download it, you will get this file, which is perfectly readable in any text editor, and it also functions as a program. If you're not familiar with how scripts work, I have videos up about that. I guess maybe this part is for more advanced users anyway, because I'm going to really glance over this and show you the highlights. So the first thing that we do is we grab some local variables. I have found that you sometimes can't rely on shell variables with bash, and it's better to just copy them into your local environment that your program is running in. The next part is that it looks for a couple of tools that are absolutely necessary to make sure this thing runs. And this is peculiar to Debian and Ubuntu, which means it'll work on Linux Mint, Elementary OS, anything based on Debian and Ubuntu. This works fine on MX Linux as far as I know. I've run it there in the past. So it does exactly what it's supposed to do. Anyway, this is just a real simple, very dirty line here that looks for rsync and less, which are two utilities that should automatically be installed with your distribution. But if for some reason it isn't there, this program won't run. And if it does not find those in the dpkg list, which is basically what this is doing, then it will go and install them. And that's it. A lot of people always ask me about this part on this, because it's something I use. You see how we have two Y's and a Q there? That is not very well documented. You have to dig for it. And people say, well, you don't need two Y's. Why do you have two Y's? Basically, the two Y's tell the command, do it even if there's an error. And don't alert me. Just keep going. Even if it comes up and says something screwed up, don't stop and alert me. One Y will answer the question, do you really want to do this? That one that comes up, you've seen that, yes, no. Two will take off even if there's an error after that, and it comes up and says whatever. If it's possible to install it, it's going to install it. And then the Q, that particular one there, that tells it to be quiet, that argument. So anyway, this is the one that checks for a USB drive. Essentially right here, this makes sure that there is a drive plugged into USB. And if there isn't, then it alerts you and says that there's no drive or in there and you need to put one in. And then the next one, it looks for the partition on the drive that is set up for BU. And basically what you have to do to make it set to satisfy this is you have to create a Linux-friendly native partition, XFS, BTRFS, or, as I said earlier, preferably ext4. And then you have to give that partition the name BU drive. That's what it's looking for. It used to do this automatically and try and format the drives, but then there was problems with that. That's back in the XBT days. People were plugging in really large drives that have to use GPT partitions, and you have to use tools that are more complex than parted to do that. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just let the user do that. So it checks for sudo privileges, and then it runs. Now it's going to check to see that the directories are there, and that's what this particular line does. And then it tells you the drive is ready. If it isn't, and then if it doesn't find it, then it gets out, and then it essentially runs an rsync command. Rsync is a hugely powerful program in Linux, and rsync has many options, as you can see. And what it will allow you to do is make an exact copy from one partition to the next. So that's what that is. And then just it exits gracefully. So this is where it creates the timestamp file right here. And that's it. It's out. And that was in that the first function there. And we also have a restore function which will do the reverse. So it will make an exact copy of whatever is in the BU directory and put it in the home directory of your computer. We have documentation that comes with BU and shows you all the different commands that you can use. And there's really just two. It's just BU-help shows you this, and BU restore accesses the BU restore function. And the program will not run unless that drive is plugged in. And this is the execution part of the script down here. So it calls on these different functions. And that's it. That's what BU looks like. Now, those of you who just watched that, first of all, you probably can come up with different ways of doing it, which is perfectly all right. So whatever works for you. And as I'm showing you this code, if you see any misspelling in the comments or anything, if the pedantic part of your soul just absolutely makes you so you have to do that, that's up to you. That's fine. But I'm not going to do anything about it. These things have been up for a long time and they run, and you're doing that for your own satisfaction. It won't. Every time I do this, somebody says, "Oh, you misspelled that." Okay, whatever. Have fun with it. Probably should have put that at the beginning of the video. So, let us go over here and let us look at the next thing on the page, which is CYA. I'm not going to be getting into this one. This was a project that I helped Jeremy O'Connell from CyberWeb Solutions do. CYA is a different kind of program. What it does is it creates snapshots of operating system folders to allow you to restore back to a former state. And it has rolling snapshots where you can, if your computer messes up and you want to put it back to Tuesday, you can. It works a lot like TimeShift, which is shipped with Linux Mint automatically. But it is 100% terminal based, and it can be automated in the background. Very easy, very flexible, and it's a pretty complex program. I didn't write any of it, but I was the big beta tester. We put up a video about that. You can check that out if you want to. That's really more of a server based kind of program. So let's see. Up. Up is a little utility that I wrote a long time ago, and Up has a life of its own. And I wrote it to be an educational tool, but then it took off and became this thing that people actually wanted to use. So let me show you how it runs first, because it's really stupid simple. Up, clear the screen. Control L does that, or you can type in clear, whichever makes you happy. By the way, gang, if you really want to get sexy and you have set a lot of variables in the terminal or whatever, there's another way to do that, and that's reset. And if you run reset on a terminal, you notice how now you've reloaded the environment completely. It's more powerful than clear. Just thought I'd show you that one. When I type in clear in videos, people always in comments say, you can use Control L. And when I use Control L and I don't say anything about clear, somebody will come along and comment either, it doesn't work for me in my terminal, how do I do it? And then I say type clear. Or they'll say, by the way, you can type clear. YouTube is fun. It really is. Okay, what were we doing? We're taking a look at Up. So running Up in its simplest form is just put in Up. And it didn't ask for my password because I've already done it in this terminal. And I don't have any updates on the machine. It's really that simple. So let's look at the help page. And you see that we have up, it gives you a full system update, and then up with remove will run a full system update, and then it will look to see if there are any packages in the system which need to be removed. It looks for orphan packages. And then clean, that does all of it. It looks for orphan packages, plus it completely clears the apt cache. And that's all explained here. So let's go look at the code real quick. This particular script was written really as a way to demonstrate how functions work in programming. That was the idea. I did not think that it would actually become a tool that people wanted to use, because when you look at the functions, they are so incredibly simple. It's beyond belief. So once again, we open up with dpkg, looking to make sure that less is installed, which is the viewer for the help information. And that should automatically be installed in your Linux distribution anyway. This is more for Ubuntu and Linux Mint than it would be for Debian, but I have used it on Debian systems because the way Debian installs things at the terminal when you do updates is slightly different. In other words, if you do a full upgrade on Debian, that's different than what it does on Ubuntu. A full upgrade on Ubuntu means it grabs the kernel. So a regular upgrade, essentially what that means is that you are going to update everything but system critical packages. They will be left alone, and you're just updating software essentially. And sometimes in some critical installations, especially on Debian, that's what you have to do. But in Ubuntu, it's pretty much taken for granted that you want to do a full upgrade every time you update. Same with Linux Mint as well. So if you use Debian, you can use this, but just keep that in mind. So anyway, we have the first function, which is update. Oh, this is an interesting call here. Set E. What does that do? If you put that at the beginning of a script, basically it is a way to make the system very sensitive to errors. And what it will do is, if there is any error whatsoever, it will exit the script. It'll just quit. It will not try and keep going. So if it throws an error, it will leave the error on the screen, the script will stop running and return you to a prompt. And the reason why I did that is I didn't necessarily want to have update errors while this is running. I wanted it, if something didn't work or a mirror wasn't available, I wanted it to stop. I didn't want it to keep trying doing it, So the functions themselves after that are just really stupid simple. Like this one is the update function. All it does is sudo apt update, which we're all pretty familiar with, and that goes and checks to see if there's anything that needs to be upgraded, and then run a full upgrade. Once again, we have the double YY. People always ask about that. You only need one Y. No, you don't. Well, you do, but if you put two, you're not going to get alerted. My kitty is playing with her ball down here. Y'all hear that? That's what that jingle bell is in the background. So she'll get tired of it in a minute, or it could go on for hours. We'll see what happens now, won't we? So if we put the clean function in, that just adds this particular thing. If we do remove, then it does the auto remove function. That's it. And so it's really stupid simple. And then there's the help part here, which uses an here document. Give me that. I'm going to take that from her. Well, I had to do that. I had to take that away. So that's where I paused and did that. Because that could go on for a very long time when she gets playing. Her name is Rue, and she's our newest little kitten, and she's very playful. So she'll find something else noisy here in a minute, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, we have those simple functions, and then when it comes down here to the execution part of the script, it just calls on them. And you have different options there. So if you just type in up with no arguments, then it just runs the update, and then it runs the leave function, which is just getting out of the program. That's it. Absurdly simple. You wouldn't believe how many people have downloaded and used this program. It's also been rewritten for Arch-based Linux. So you can get it from Manjaro. I don't know the name of that program, but it's out there. Somebody has done that. So that is up, ladies and gentlemen. All right, moving on, we're taking a look at a program called Show, which I actually used in the very beginning of this video to show you that little warning script, that little text there. This was written out of necessity. At one point in time, I was doing videos on a machine that was an old E machine with a single core Celeron Intel processor and 2 gigabytes of RAM. And it didn't have much video capability. But I was actually able to record videos showing people how to do things in the terminal on that machine. And I needed a way to display text files one after the other without any adornment on the screen at all. So if you're working in a terminal and you just use cat to scroll it up the screen, that doesn't quite work. And if you use something like Nano, then you have all of the Nano stuff around it, all of the different options and everything. And I wanted something that would just show text without anything around it at all, and do it with multiple files. So to show you how that works real quick, I don't have to type it. I can just go up here like so. See, it says show, and then I took that little warning text file and I threw it in here. And now it shows it. So when you're done, hit the space bar. First gives you a warning and says no more files to let you know, hey, you're going to leave the program, because when it leaves, boom, it's gone. That's Show. That's all it is. And you can type in multiple files, one after the other. And the original idea was to make these cards similar to what you just saw that would be in some sort of logical order, and then you could type them in, and then every time you hit a key, it goes to the next file. So that was the idea behind Show. We'll take a quick look at the code. Okay, here we are. Show essentially just grabs a file, and the first thing it does here that I can see it's jumping out at me, it turns off the blinking cursor, so you can't see the cursor. And then it grabs your file that you put in the list, and it uses a utility called Fold to do a word wrap, so it fits in whatever size terminal that you're using. And it looks up the number. I think how it works is it looks up the number of columns. Yeah, it's right here. So right here is a variable that you set where it goes and figures out how many columns are in the terminal that you're running. And then it inputs that number into the fold command to make sure that all of the text fits on the screen. And then it takes that information and throws it in this variable called file. And the file is part of a loop here. Let's see, where is the loop? So we set that up, and then we have to have, of course, we have to have the help file there in a function. So we come down here to the execution. And yeah, it's a for loop, so it grabs it. File is what we just set with that information, runs the fold command. And this part right here is however many files you put in there, just any number of arguments. And throws it into display, which is the actual function that makes that happen. There it is right here, display. So yeah, it's been a long time since I actually looked at that one. That was one that's born out of necessity. People ask, they go, well, if you can write these things, why don't you have hundreds of them? Because really for me, the strange thing about writing scripts is that I have to have an absolute clear need for it. I have no desire to try and rewrite Nano in Bash, that sort of thing. So there you go. It's a quick look at Show. Next thing on the page here is P2V, which is a little script that I wrote to solve yet another problem. At one point in time, what I needed to do was to take a picture and combine that with an audio file to create a video file. And that's what this does. And P2V essentially uses FFmpeg to pull that off. So to make it work, you have to have FFmpeg installed. You also must have FLAC installed. This is not a perfect program. I can get it to run. I can make it work for my own needs. But if you want to play with it, you can go right ahead. It's actually quite primitive, to tell you the truth. It's really just taking information that you type in and putting it in one command. It sets a bunch of variables for the file names and stuff like that, and then throws it into the FFmpeg command. And that's pretty much all that does. All right, gang. This is important for you guys who are always asking me about things that I have talked about in videos where it's not a published script, but it's something you'd like to look at. Like, I have a lot of network-related scripts, Sync All, Sync It. I recently posted a video about Teensy Sync. If you want to look at those, this is where they are. They're in the Easy Linux Bash Script Collection 2020. This is just a whole bunch of little bits and pieces and stubs and all kinds of stuff. The documentation in here is horrid. You feel free to download this and take a look at it. And you might want to watch the video that goes with it, because otherwise it's not going to make a whole lot of sense. And I've added a bunch of stuff since the video was posted too. And there have been updates over time. So this has all kinds of little bits and pieces and stubs and parts and whatnot. So that's what that is. Bash scripts, tweaks, and tricks down here. So you can download that directly from this site. I haven't watched that video. This has been up here for a very long time, so I have actually at this point I don't really have a great idea of what's in there. Can you hear all this noise in the background? That's that cat. She has decided that now is the time to play. You know, when I do the radio show during the day, I record the radio show and it plays at night. They do the same thing. Sometimes I have to put them out or put them in another room. But it's nighttime now, so I'm not going to do that. Y'all are just going to have to deal. It's just a kitty. Why you got to be so mean? Anyway, it's the same disclaimer that you saw at the beginning of the video. So this gives you an idea of what's here, ladies and gentlemen. And I like to kind of review this stuff every now and again, and you're more than welcome to come check it out for yourself. It is at easylinux.com, and it's on the Bash Scripts page. And I want to thank everybody for their kind words and comments over the years about these particular scripts. And each time I've ever written one, I've always posted quite an in-depth video about it where I go through everything. So if you watched this video and didn't quite know what I was talking about, then go back and watch the other videos that go along with the scripts, whichever one tickled your fancy, and you can give them a spin. So, yeah. Let me tell you real quick now that we're down at the end of the video, because obviously if you've hung around this long, you're enjoying yourself and you're interested. One of the reasons that I wrote XBT and BU, and why I'm a little bit persnickety, I used the word passionate earlier, but I guess maybe you could say OCD about backups. Many years ago, I took a job at a radio station as an operations manager, and it was a small little cluster of radio stations. There were 2 in one building. And about a month after I got to work there, the server that held all of the audio stuff just crashed. Just went down. And I said, okay, where are the backups? And all I got from these people that were working there were blank stares. What backups? There wasn't any. So to make a long story short, I had to fly in a technician for this particular automation system that we were using. And the guy was trying to recover what was on the drive and ended up inadvertently destroying it. Because this was back in the days of Windows 2000 Server, And for Windows 2000 Server at that time to recognize drives of more than a certain size, it needed a patch. And this idiot couldn't figure that out, so he ended up running check disk on the thing and destroyed the drive. And so it was horrible. It took 6 months to rebuild that library. And so after that, I have always been very crazy about backups, even on my home machines, and making sure that there is another copy of everything somewhere. I actually have a server on my network at this point that's all its job is. It's a file server. I did the Teensy Sync video about a server called Teensy, which I built out of an old little tiny Asus laptop that's not good for anything else these days. And all that does is allow me to back up files. So I have that. I have an online backup, and then I have lots of different external drives all over the place, and stuff off-site too. So yeah, I'm a little crazy about that, but I'll never forget them just looking at me and going, "Backups? What do you mean backups?" I'm like, you've got all of the commercials and music and jingles and liners and everything for 2 radio stations, and you didn't back it up? Yeah. So that's where that came from. Hey y'all, you can listen to me on the radio if you want to. I do a show Monday through Friday, 7 to midnight, called Evening Time for B99.9, which is a radio station in southwestern Virginia, and we play country music. It is a live radio show, so you just click Listen Live up top here, and it goes to the stream. See right there? That's all you got to do is click Listen Live, and it should start playing automatically. You may get a message that you need to drop your ad blocker. If you do, you can do that without worrying about people putting bad things on your computer or stealing your data or anything like that. There's no ads being fed. It just seems to be something in the software. I haven't had anybody tell me that it's done that to them in quite some time, but you may run into that. And it works pretty much anywhere in the world, except that we have had some issues with some European countries where the ISPs block it locally for whatever reason. We have no idea. Don't make any money off of this. It's just my regular job these days, is doing this particular radio show. So you can check that out. I will put a link in the description to this video. Or you can just remember, it's b999fm.com. Thanks for watching. Your comments and suggestions are always very much welcome. I would like some input from you guys. Those of you who have listened all the way to the end, obviously you care. And I would like to hear what you would like me to try and cover Linux related on the channel as we move forward here. I'm kind of out of ideas, as I said in my last video, and that's one of the reasons I want to expand and do some other things. But I don't want Linux to go away on the channel completely. And if you guys have any suggestions, I am certainly open to hearing from them. You can put them in the comments section here, or you can send me a note at easylinux.com. Just click on the contact page, and that's the best way to get in touch with me directly. So, thanks for watching. We'll do it again soon.